I want people thousands of years from now to know that a princess's crown can also bear the weight of the empire. In the 16th year of Shunhei, the hall of Hanjiang was so silent that a falling needle could be heard. People knelt all over the floor, each of them breathing with utmost caution. The third prince knelt at the very front, his forehead pressed against the cold golden tiles, cold sweat soaking through 3 layers of his court robes. The Grand Master stood in the center of the hall, his white hair cascading down like moonlight, the hem of his robe still carrying dust from Mount Kunlun. His eyes were cold and indifferent, as if the sentence he had just spoken, which was enough to ruin an infant's life, was merely a statement about today's weather. This child will kill the current emperor. The third prince's body trembled violently, nearly collapsing to the floor. He raised his head, his eyes rimmed with red, and looked toward the silent man on the dragon throne. His father, the emperor of Great Mo. The emperor did not look at him. He merely looked down at the swaddled baby in his arms. The newborn slept peacefully, her face wrinkled and puckered, like a freshly molded clay doll. If he wished, he could take her life in an instant.
Father, I beg of you to spare her life.
The imperial astrologer is never wrong. This girl cannot be allowed to live. Your Majesty, this girl cannot be allowed to live.
The voices gradually grew into a din, like a pot of water on the verge of boiling. The emperor remained silent throughout. He simply looked at the child. At that moment, the baby opened her eyes. They were a pair of extremely dark and bright eyes, like 2 pure flawless pieces of black jade, yet also like a vast, endless night. There was absolutely no emotion in those eyes, no respect or love for family, no desire for power, and no struggle or grief over her own fate. He just looked at him quietly. The emperor suddenly let out a sigh.
Take her back. She hasn't even seen her mother yet.
The third prince froze for a moment, and then scrambled up in a flurry. He steadily took his daughter's swaddling clothes.
Father, what about after that?
After that, you must learn to be a good father.
Your Majesty, is that all?
The emperor ignored him. He turned his head to look at the Grand Preceptor.
Can you divine the length of our reign?
The Grand Preceptor shook his head. Heaven's will is inscrutable. The emperor nodded, his gaze falling once more upon the swaddled baby being carried away.
Just raise her as an ordinary child.
The third prince kowtowed several more times until his forehead began to bleed. A palace servant came to report that the third prince's consort had awakened and wished to see the child. He hastily got up and ran out.
Send an imperial physician to tend to the third prince.
These events were told to me later by others. My parents repeatedly hid it from me, but when I was 5 years old, I still learned of my destiny. I thought it was absolute nonsense. I was my imperial grandfather's youngest granddaughter, and he was very good to me. Among the imperial grandchildren of this generation, I was the only one he personally named. I had no reason at all to kill him, yet everyone said the Grand Preceptor was never wrong. Life in Tanzhou was far freer than in the capital. In all of Great Mo, no one was unaware of the prophecy about me, but here, I was the only daughter of Prince Duan, having been infamed as a commandery princess early on. No matter how much idle gossip there was behind my back, no one dared bring it before my eyes. Father corresponded frequently with the capital. The gifts imperial grandfathers sent me were sometimes exquisite objects, and sometimes some books. I grew up carefree like this until I was 13. In the spring of the 29th year of Shunhe, an epidemic broke out on the border of Tanzhou. My mother came from a family of imperial physicians, and was unwilling to stand by and do nothing. As an imperial prince, my father could not shirk his responsibility either. On a misty, drizzling morning, they left the Prince Duan estate with several carriage loads of medicine. I waited for 27 days. I want people thousands of years from now to know that a princess's crown can also bear the weight of the realm. What I got was the news that the epidemic had subsided, along with hanging white mourning banners and fluttering paper money. The governor, who returned my parents' ashes, had a face covered in tears.
The prince and consort sacrificed themselves for the common people. Please restrain your grief, commandery princess.
I held those 2 wooden boxes, weeping silently, not knowing when I fainted. That day, I had begged my father not to go. Those infected refugees were driven out from the second prince's fief. If we report this to the emperor, imperial grandfather will surely make a decision.
I will report it, but official matters take time to process. The common people cannot wait.
There were 2 living people that day, but now, only these small wooden boxes remain. Because of the epidemic, I couldn't even see their bodies intact. When I woke up, my maternal aunt had just finished administering acupuncture on me. She held my hand tightly with heartache and said, "The emperor has issued an urgent imperial decree. The funerals of Prince Duan and his consort will be handled by the imperial court. Once it is over, they will bring you back to the capital." Back then, my father gave up all his power and wealth to secure this peace for me, which I only got to enjoy for 8 years. In the end, I still had to return to that square of sky enclosed by red walls. After an absence of 8 years, imperial grandfather had aged quite a bit. His hair and beard were laced with much more silver. I performed the full formal kowtow, and he pulled me up, his lips trembling as if he wanted to say something. His beard quivered for a long time, and then 2 lines of tears fell first. As he cried, I began to cry too. Grandfather the emperor bestowed upon me the title of Princess Roujia, allowing me to inherit my father's fiefdom and enjoy the stipend of a prince of the first rank. He also carved out 2 additional portions of land from the second second prince's fiefdom for me. The imperial court erupted in fierce debate, arguing that I was the destined regicide and did not deserve such extraordinary honors. But he didn't care. He brought me to the Grand Princess's manor. The Grand Princess was grandfather's older sister of the same mother. In her youth, she had held the marshal's seal on the battlefield. Later, she injured her back in a fall from a horse. Her father asked what reward she desired, and she requested the manor closest to the imperial palace, along with the freedom of marriage. Yet she remained unmarried to this day. She was 2 years older than His Majesty, making her 64 now. She did not rise to greet him, and grandfather did not mind.
Imperial sister, I wish to leave Lingyi in your care.
If it were such a simple matter, would you have come in person?
The child will be personally tutored by the Grand Master, but since she is a girl, it is inconvenient for her to reside at the Tianquan Pavilion.
That is no issue. Let him come here to conduct the lessons. I will arrange a place for her.
The Grand Master never withheld any knowledge during his lessons. He taught me classics, history, political discourse, astrology, the 8 trigrams, and statecraft. As long as I wished to learn, he would teach me. Yet every time he came to teach, my grandaunt always stayed at the far end of the Grand Princess's manor, keeping her distance and refusing to show her face. I once asked the Grand Master if we should move our lessons elsewhere. Without even looking up from the scroll in his hand, he replied calmly,
Since she has permitted me to come, she has her own calculations. There is no need to worry.
"Do you know what grandaunt is thinking?"
I have never quite understood her.
On the Qixi festival, I looked down at the main street from the second-story window. The laughter and chatter of young men and women drifted in the wind. The streets were bustling with crowds, and the lights kept the night as bright as day. Footsteps echoed from the staircase. I turned around to look. My royal grandfather, dressed in dark silk robes, was holding a lantern in his hand. There were no attendants behind him.
Your cousins all went out to play today. Why didn't you go?
The assignments from the Grand Master are profound. Your granddaughter is slow-witted, so I thought I should spend more effort studying them.
The Grand Master said, you are incomparably brilliant, better than many people he has ever seen. To put it bluntly, what you are doing counts as deceiving the Emperor. Zhao Zhao.
He called me that. No one had called me by this childhood name for a long time. I was born on the 15th of the lunar month, under a full moon, so my parents gave me this childhood name.
You cannot hide in this attic for the rest of your life.
I lowered my head even further.
Your parents' deaths are not your fault.
Father died for the people of the world, and mother died for the path of a healer. It was not because of me. I understand all of this. I just want to live a slightly easier life first. The room fell into a temporary silence. Laughter and festive music from outside were blown in by the wind. My royal grandfather sighed and helped me up. His gaze passed over me and looked out at the night sky beyond the window, as if looking at a place very, very far away.
The Grand Master prophesied that you would kill me. The entire court demanded that I execute you. I had no schemes. I just felt that whatever I did was wrong. If I were to kill you, my son would hate me. If I were to lock you away, then you would surely try every means to kill me due to the mistreatment. So I thought, it is better to do nothing and just let you grow up well. I will treat you just like the other children so that you won't ever harbor that thought.
I froze, stunned. But what if, in the end, I still become the regicide? My royal grandfather, whose eyes had always held the welfare of the world's people, quietly. His voice was so calm, it was as if he weren't speaking of his own life and death.
Then that is simply the cruelty of fate and has nothing to do with either of us. The prophecy is but an outcome. To change one's life because of a mere prophecy is to put the cart before the horse. Instead of fearing it, one might as well use it.
Outside the window, the sound of fireworks was deafening. Yet to me, it felt incredibly distant and ethereal, as if separated by a pane of glass.
Since I am destined to die at your hands, then before that day arrives, I can live my life much more boldly.
Suddenly, I understood. The hardest part had never been how to deal with me, but that he had to calmly accept this destiny. I was the designated wielder of the blade in the prophecy. Yet, I still feared fate. He was the one destined to lie on the chopping block. Yet his state of mind was so transcendent. It wasn't because he had thousands of ways to escape it, but because he was strong enough that even if he were to die tomorrow, he could still stay true to his own heart. Lingyi understands. My deepest thanks to royal grandfather for your guidance. Many years later, I gradually understood that smile of his. He was pleased, knowing that I would surely grow into an unparalleled sword. The state preceptor's lessons went on for 7 years. During those 7 years, the position of crown prince remained vacant. Jianyi Pavilion was in an absolute uproar. Under pressure, royal grandfather finally invested the eldest imperial son, King Qin, as the crown prince last year. My cousins had basically all married, leaving me as the only one of this generation without a match. I never actively sought to meet suitable families, and they were all wary of the regicide prophecy, terrified that an imperial decree of marriage might descend upon them one day. Their fear of me, ironically, secured my freedom and peace. Until that day, someone from the palace came to invite me in. I was led to Hanjiang Hall.
Lingyi, Come stand a bit closer.
Prime Minister Ji turned his body toward me.
Great Miao is on friendly terms with the northern state of Beatty. Most of the cults sent by the new ruler of Beatty were infected with plague, yet they have turned around and falsely accused us, claiming Great Miao intends to start a war.
I pondered for a moment and offered my perspective. The new ruler of Beatty is fierce and aggressive. He only ascended the throne after killing his 4 elder brothers. He wants to start a war to establish his authority, but lacks a justifiable reason. If we sue for peace to show goodwill, it will surely damage our national prestige. But if we confront them directly, we will play right into their hands. My imperial grandfather looked at me, tapping his index finger twice against the side of his teacup, producing a crisp, clicking sound. That was not a nervous habit from contemplation. It was an explicit sign. A chill ran down my spine. Taking a deep breath, I suggest we pay them back, in their own coin. We are currently due to deliver a shipment of tea. We should take their money first, then deliver the goods in installments, citing a poor harvest. Give them 1/5 first. A prolonged lack of tea and salt will inevitably lead to illness among their people. Once they are willing to bow their heads and admit their mistake, we can then deliver the rest of the goods.
Absurd. Such conduct. How is it any different from bandits and highwaymen? Our Great Miao is a land of ritual and propriety. How can we act in this manner?
If the new ruler of Beatty were a benevolent sovereign, he would never have committed such a provocative act. Since he does not know what is good for him, we shall teach him a lesson. This is done for the sake of both nations' reputations, to repay injury with justice. What is wrong with that? He who steals a belt buckle is executed, but he who steals a state becomes a lord, and within the gates of the lords. And yet righteousness and justice reside therein, though it may not be entirely honorable. The benefits are concrete. No war will break out at the border, and our dynasty's dignity will remain intact. Could it be that in Lord Song's eyes, the people's livelihood and the nation's foundation are less important than etiquette and rights? He was left speechless.
What do you think, Minister Ji?
The princess was personally taught by the imperial preceptor. Indeed, she was taught exceptionally well.
Walking out of the hall of Hanjiang, as the cool wind blew, I realized my back was already drenched in cold sweat.
I was the one who told him what you said.
I thought there was a traitor in the princess's manner. Her smile deepened. I did slowly list them down.
The emperor will turn 70 next year. Only last year did he reluctantly crown the crown prince. Why is that, anyway? Because in our Jiu family, there is a lack of qualified successors. He is still dissatisfied with those children. The eldest is eager for quick success and instant benefits. The second is hypocritical and treacherous. And though the fourth has no ability, at least he has no ambition. Your cousins have been spoiled by their parents and cannot withstand any hardships. They are not fit for great responsibilities.
Although he has no major illness, his body will age day by day. How could he not be anxious? You lost your parents when you were young, and fortunately received his favor. Now that you have received the true teachings of the imperial preceptor, classics, history, political essays, and military strategy, you excel in everything. Whether you assist the emperor in the future or lead the court officials, he can rest in peace after his passing. I am a piece of gold. I am valuable wherever I go. I am only 20 years old. I have plenty of time in the future. In early June, I set off for Tanzhou to pay respects to my parents. The incense altar in the Prince of Duan's manor was well maintained. It is well maintained year-round. The rosewood bed in the bedroom was perfectly intact. Lying on this bed, I dreamed of things I hadn't dreamed of in a very long time. As a child, I sat in front of my parents' graves for an entire day. I brought the famous wine from the capital, which they loved very much during their lifetime. One flask was poured onto the deep soil, and the other went down my throat, burning so much that 2 tears slid straight down my face. On the day I returned to the city, the inspector general came to see me off. Just as I was about to turn and board the carriage, a minor official came riding on horseback, shouting,
"Urgent report, Your Honor. Last night's heavy rain caused the river to swell rapidly, and the river dike in Yangzhou collapsed. Villages and towns have been destroyed by the flood."
The inspector general's vision went black, and he collapsed right on the spot. I gave him a hand, and immediately ordered someone to bring brush, ink, paper, and inkstone. Using the front of the carriage, I began to write a letter. When I finished writing, take my handwritten letter and write at top speed. To deliver this urgent report to the capital.
And what about you, Your Highness?
Immediately send people to purchase grain and medicinal herbs, and allocate half of the elite forces to me. I will set off immediately, taking about 30 people with me. We galloped out of the city, heading straight for the disaster area. After galloping all night, we arrived at Chiyun town, and it was already dawn. Dark clouds pressed down heavily, and the floodwater was waist deep. Half of the houses had been washed away. I showed the provincial governor's command token to Li Zheng. My surname is Lin, and I am the resident envoy from the capital. I was ordered to deliver grain, medicinal herbs, and sandbags. I am not familiar with this place, so I cannot help with evacuating the residents. So I joined in to pack sandbags, having ridden a horse all night, and then swung a shovel for the entire morning. The cloth wrapped around my palms had worn through 2 layers, and the wind grew increasingly stronger. I retreated up the mountain with the villagers. When we reached the entrance of the village, I looked back at the dark, heavy sky. The waves whipped up by the gale were higher than the houses. With one crash of a wave, a house would shatter into countless pieces, submerging silently into the water. Or perhaps there was a sound, but amid the thunder and lightning, and the howling wind and rain, it could not reach anyone's ears. The food supplies won't last more than 2 days. I fretted as I looked over the account book, resting my aching head on the table. A gust of cool wind blew in. I looked up at the entrance. A young man stood there, holding a small copper kettle. He hadn't expected to meet my gaze, and seemed a bit flustered.
I came to bring some hot water.
He filled the empty cup in front of me. Only then did I smell the scent of medicinal herbs.
Sour jujube seed soup nourishes the blood and calms the mind, clearing heat and relieving irritability. There were a few bags of sour date seeds among the herbs you brought. They might have been mixed in by mistake. The village doctor said keeping them would serve no purpose, so I just brewed it to help everyone relax.
He looked to be about my age, yet he was remarkably adept at reading people. I took a sip. Sweet, sour, and slightly bitter, washing away the helplessness that had just begun to creep in. He had an excellent bone structure. His brow, eyes, nose, and jaw. Every feature I saw was picture perfect. Just as I snapped out of my daze, I realized his eyes were fixed intently on me. His thin lips parted slightly, as if he were about to say something, when suddenly, someone lifted the tent flap. The soldier from Hanzhou Prefecture looked uneasy.
My lord, an official has arrived who insists on seeing you.
The man leading them was dressed in official robes, with servants holding umbrellas on both sides, keeping him completely dry. Upon seeing me, he bowed very respectfully.
Han Sheng, the prefect of Hangzhou, pays respects to Princess Roujia.
You recognize me?
When I served in the capital, I had the honor of seeing your highness. We heard the disaster here is severe. The governor knew you were still in Tanzhou and would surely visit the disaster area in person, so he sent subordinates to gather supplies and come to assist.
Hangzhou and Tanzhou are separated only by a river. Their levees were built strong, so they discharged all the floodwaters into Tanzhou. Coming to deliver grain now is like a wolf offering condolences to a sheep. What are your intentions, Prefect Han?
Floods and fires are merciless. Please leave this place with me, princess.
I cannot go with you. What do you intend to do?
Why be so stubborn, princess? The grain you brought won't last more than 3 days, will it? Whether from the imperial court or transferred from elsewhere, not a single grain of rice will reach you. Other than coming with me, you have no choice.
A flash of lightning strikes. I have already drawn the sword of the guard beside him, holding it across his neck. I have been generous and merciful enough to tolerate so many words from you. Now, either hand over the grain obediently, or I will throw your head back to Hangzhou Prefectural Office.
An official of my minor rank cannot orchestrate such a grand scheme. If I die, these men will not obey your command either.
Then we will just have to take it by force.
Ha ha ha. Take it with what? The soldiers behind me are fully armed. The dozens of men you brought are indeed too few.
The sound of wind, breaking swords, and wails echo. Amidst the clashing of weapons, many people leap out from the woods on both sides of the road, completely surrounding these uninvited guests. Han Sheng turns his head, risking having his throat slit. He sees his soldiers suddenly thinned out. The missing half are all lying on the ground. I have been here for days, and know the terrain well. The elites I brought are also accustomed to the environment, making them a step faster in combat. Now, Prefect Han, how many chances of winning do you think you have?
You laid an ambush beforehand.
I take a step closer to him, pressing my blade even tighter against him. What did you think I spent all those years learning from the Grand Preceptor? There certainly aren't that many rules of etiquette in this world to keep one studying for 7 long years. Han Sheng refuses to speak, but I already know who is pulling the strings from behind. 7 years ago, the Prince of Chu infected plague-ridden refugees for his own selfish gain, causing my parents to go away, never to return. And now, he still shows no remorse, daring to embezzle funds even from a matter as critical as repairing the dikes. The Prince of Chu knows full well I am not my father. I will never swallow my anger for the sake of so-called family ties. If I do not use the local populace to threaten him, how can I buy myself enough time to deal with him? This time, I will make him pay the price. During the night, someone enters the tent to refill the water. It is still that young man with the striking, fine-boned features. I frown slightly. Just how much wild sour jujube did I bring? I still haven't finished drinking it.
If you do not wish to drink any more of it, then you should retire early.
A soldier of the prefectural guard enters.
Your Highness, a man has arrived on horseback, claiming to be an official from Hangzhou Prefecture. Did he come alone, without any escort at all?
I ponder for a brief moment, then write a letter, and have the young man deliver it to Li Zheng. I issue orders for a new defensive formation, to guard against the visitor. He wore simple, dark-colored casual clothes, bowing deeply with hands clasped.
Zhou Jiaokun, prefect of Hangzhou, pays respects to Princess Roujia.
He pulls a small arrow quiver cylinder from his sleeve.
This was tied to a bird's leg for sending messages.
I shake out the slip of paper inside, just 3 short lines of characters. Yet reading them feels like plunging into a freezing abyss. Eliminate them swiftly. My father's handwriting. He ordered the prefect and the regional inspector to do everything they can to delay me, no matter what method they use. They only need to keep me barely breathing to account to the emperor. Sung Liang, coercion is useless. None of those present must be left alive. The slip of paper was also stamped with a seal. I rolled the paper back up. Why did you betray the Prince of Chu and defect to my side?
Because in the 29th year of Shunhei, I was the county magistrate of Tongyin County, Hangzhou. I had only been in office for 3 months when the plague broke out. Despite my very best efforts, many people still died in Tongyin County. I wrote to the prefecture seat for aid, but the men sent by the Prince of Chu drove everyone infected with the plague out of Hangzhou territory. What the consequences were, Your Highness knows better than I. The Prince and Princess of Duan, however, died of the plague. At the time, the Prince of Chu sent his men, and I delayed them for some days. Yet I never expected the cruel twist of fate. These are the tasks the Prince of Chu ordered me to do during my 7 years in office. He is very cautious, so there is very little, are not many.
I flipped through the dates roughly. Every detail was properly recorded. The tasks ordered by the Prince of Chu were on the surface about requisitioning grain and raising taxes, and secretly opening private mines. It seemed like he was merely greedy for wealth, but in truth, he was using it to fund a private army. The next day, the weather cleared. Cooking smoke rose from the camp. The residents walked out of their tents, dividing their labor clearly, just like many days in the past. Their clothes fluttered in the wind like hoisted sails. Natural disasters are unpredictable, and man-made calamities are hard to prevent. Once the water floods the area, we will just move to another place. As long as a person still has a breath left, they must keep living their life, standing tall and surviving. Just as I was gazing down the mountain in a daze, I caught sight of a procession on the road. With the imperial banner, it was the disaster relief team from the capital. The escorting general came over during the inventory check.
The emperor dispatched a squad of men for the princess's deployment and handed me a letter.
The envelope felt heavy in my hand. I returned to my tent. When I opened it, there was only a sheet of paper and a token engraved with a dragon and a tiger in combat. The dragon-tiger token could command the emperor's personal guard, the sign of the Tiger Roar army. Only 8 words were written on the paper. Anything within the law may be done. I dispatched my personal guards in several directions and had Zhou Zhaokun send a message back to the capital, saying that we had successfully manipulated them using the grain ration scheme. I asked him what we should do next, with the Tiger Roar army moving with lightning speed, and the detailed intelligence provided by Zhou Zhaokun. The plan went very smoothly. Before the Prince of Chu's reply could arrive, I had already secured everything. That very night, I returned to the capital with Zhou Zhaokun and a squad of men. At dusk, our group entered the city. We waited in a carriage at the back gate of the Court of State ceremonial until nearly midnight, before we were finally let inside. By the time everything was arranged, it was nearly 3 in the morning. I quietly made my way to the back gate of the Grand Princess's manor. My grandaunt's bedchamber was still lit. She rarely engaged in making incense seals, so she must have been worrying about me these past few days. After the maid withdrew, I walked over to her side. After hesitating for a moment, I gently knelt down before her. There is one thing that will hurt Grand Imperial Father, but I have no choice but to do it. She turned toward me, bent down slightly. He reached out and stroked my hair. It had been many years since anyone had done that to me.
The emperor has already given you your answer.
I looked up at him. He did not say anything more. I stood up and turned. I walked around the screen and finally saw the answer. A crimson official robe was displayed on a sandalwood hanger. An official hat and a tablet also sat on the small table next to it. I sat facing this propped-up official uniform until dawn, when the morning court session had already begun for a while. Standing outside the threshold, my shadow was cast upon the floor of the hall, stretched out very long. His Majesty noticed me, but made no sign. Once I cross this threshold, there will be no turning back. I locked eyes with His Majesty upon the dragon throne. Inside the hall, the officials bowed their heads. The official robes and black gauze caps formed a cage that was hard to break through. My shadow was trapped inside the cage, unable to advance or retreat, lying quietly on the ground, yet surging with hidden currents. I held up my tablet, stepped over the threshold. This minister has a memorial to present. My voice echoed among the pillars. I ignored the looks of surprise and fear cast by everyone, straightened my back, held my arms level, and walked to the very front of the ranks. Kneeling before the steps, I took the envelope from my robe and presented it with both hands. Princess Chenru impeaches the Prince of Chu for embezzling maintenance funds, causing the river dike to collapse and flood the towns and villages. The witness and physical evidence are both present. I request His Majesty's sacred judgment. The hall instantly erupted in clamor. The prince's face turned ashen.
Out of pity for your youth, I took on the responsibility of governance. I active assumed the duty of managing it. Over the years I spent money and effort without ever asking you to share the burden. Now it is merely a momentary oversight. Yet you hold on to this and won't let go. Being so aggressive in the Grand Court, where does this leave the dignity of the realm?
A momentary oversight. I presented all the evidence of guilt in my hands. Guilt is not the work of a single year. It is decades of cutting corners and using substandard materials that caused half of the Great Dike to completely collapse. This is the ledger of Hangzhou Prefecture, which is vastly different from the imperial audit reports of each year. Recorded within are not only the embezzled dike funds, but also the additionally levied grain taxes and bribes from passing merchants for facilitation.
Gu Lingyi, you are talking absolute nonsense.
If the Crown Prince hadn't stood in the middle to block him, he would have probably rushed over to hit me. There is also an account for iron ore, and the details of purchasing horses and smelting iron. The details of your private hoarding of troops and horses are right before His Majesty. Everything you have done. The governor of Hangzhou has already confessed everything. The minister of the Court of State Ceremonies stepped forward at the opportune moment.
Last night, the princess personally escorted the governor of Hangzhou to the Court of State Ceremonial regarding his actions. He has made a full confession. My subordinates have already verified them.
How do you prove that all of this is true?
Producing the dragon tiger tally. The hall instantly fell silent. Now is the time for you to prove your own innocence. The iron ore and the troops. Can you make them all vanish overnight? This evidence was all verified by the Huxiao army dispatched by His Majesty. In questioning me, are you also questioning the Tiger Roar army's loyalty to His Majesty? His Majesty finished reading all the petitions, slammed down his paperweight, and the officials throughout the hall fell to their knees.
Second son, do you still wish to argue?
The prince collapsed to the ground, his expression suddenly transforming.
Father, what the imperial physician said is not true. I bear responsibility for third brother's death. He must be harboring a grudge and using this to double his revenge. Father, the junior preceptor has a point, and you pity his loneliness, but I am also your son. My third brother and I shared the same mother.
The person here least qualified to mention my father is you. He pulls 2 slips of paper from his sleeve. 7 years ago, you ordered Tongyang County to drive the infected citizens to Tanzhou, and now you had the governor of Hangzhou threaten me with grain to force my compliance. If I refused to submit, no survivors were to be left. He stared at the yellowed slip of paper.
Why do you have that?
If you and my father were not born of the same mother, I would have presented this to the emperor just now. But you provoked me repeatedly, and even tried to play the emotional card, in a desperate attempt to absolve yourself. Why should I show any regard for our family ties then? He didn't understand at all. The emperor did not want him to make excuses for himself, but hoped he would realize just how absurd his actions were.
From this day forward, the Prince of Chu is confined to his manor and shall not leave without imperial decree. Princess Roujia shall have full authority to investigate this matter, with Chancellor Ji and the Minister of Justice assisting her. We grant Roujia the Dragon Tiger Command Seal, giving her authority over the 3 ministries and 6 departments. Her presence shall be treated as our own.
Your Majesty, you must not, though the princess has her reasons. First, as a woman, her presence in court is against decorum. Second, for a junior to accuse an elder in court violates human relations. Not punishing her is already an act of immense imperial grace. How can she be allowed to hold power and handle state affairs?
Because I am not a man. Even presenting ironclad evidence is met with skepticism. Because I was born with the prophecy of being a regicide. Does that make me more dangerous than this prince who takes bribes, breaks the law, plots treason, and treats the common people like dirt? My lords, open your eyes and look. Between me, the prophesied regicide, and this corrupt, law-breaking prince who plots treason, who is truly the greater threat to our nation? After court was dismissed, grandfather kept several officials in Hanjiang Hall to discuss state affairs. When it was my turn to enter the hall, I actually felt a bit hesitant. He looked even more weary than before, not just because of the Prince of Chu, but also because of the Crown Prince. If the Crown Prince were to ascend the throne in the future, and this other prince held private troops and iron mines outside the court's control, what would become of him? It was not hard to foresee, no matter the reason. The Crown Prince should not have spoken up for his brother. Grandfather forced a slight smile.
Why did you suddenly change your mind?
I pondered for a moment, because I witnessed certain things, and suddenly understood your intentions. If I do not speak up about some things, no one ever will. You need such a person, and I am the best candidate. The sharpest blade. After the New Year's ancestral worship, the results of the spring imperial examination were released. I could not escape the Changlin banquet. After a few rounds of drinks, I got up and went to the veranda for some fresh air. The moon was bright, and the stars were sparse. The night wind swayed the gauze curtains, as the lights and figures rippled like waves. 2 faint, crisp bell chimes sounded by my ear. A fragrant breeze swept past. Sensing something, I turned my head. 2 steps away stood a young man in a red robe and official hat, with a flower pinned at his temple. Even through a layer of gauze curtain, one could tell he was exceptionally handsome. The red robe lent him a touch of brilliance, while the silk flower on his hat made him look even more high-spirited. I vaguely recalled he was the runner-up of this year's examination. What was his name again? Having had too much to drink, I could not quite remember. With a smile in his eyes, he lowered his gaze and nodded. I also smiled and nodded, then withdrew my gaze to look at the sky.
What is the princess looking at?
Nothing much, just observing the stars.
I have long heard that the princess studied under the Grand Astrologer and received his true teachings. Is there anything special about tonight?
I thought to myself, here is another one trying to take a shortcut. If you wish to seek a good career by striking up a conversation with me, then you are mistaken. The entire court is on guard against me, calling me an ill omen who curses her parents and kin, and a disaster who interferes with state affairs. By speaking so much to me now, Samana will surely impeach you tomorrow. He did not speak. Just as I was about to turn around and return to the banquet, he suddenly said,
I wonder if Her Highness still has trouble falling asleep nowadays, and if you still drink wild sour jujube seed soup.
Memories buried deep within emerged from the wine. Memories of Chiyun town.
Your humble servant, Shiezu, pays respects to Her Highness.
The night wind lifted the gauze curtains, sweeping between the two of us, causing the tassels on my head and the silk flower on his lapel to sway in unison. The clinking of cups brought me back to my senses.
Your Highness, I understand everything you just said. That is precisely why I am here. When you stood before the imperial court regarding the matter of the river dikes, every word you spoke was powerful and resounding. Yet doubts about you from the court never ceased. With words like disregarding rights and laws, and violating ethical principles constantly being thrown at you. You should not have to bear all this. Your Highness, you spoke up for the common people, so someone ought to speak up for you as well. I wanted to help you, which is why I worked so hard to get here, whether as a stepping stone or as a blade. As long as I can be used by you, and can be of help to you, Aishi would die 9 deaths without regret.
His eyes were clear and burning hot, warm enough to make one's heart tremble. I opened my mouth, but only managed a stiff, thank you. For my imperial grandfather's 70th birthday, the Beatty delegation came to offer congratulations. The one responsible for receiving the Beatty delegation was Prince Malibu, the younger brother of their new king. During the evening banquet, he suddenly proposed to marry a princess of Great Xia as his primary queen, though he did not mention any names. I was the only princess currently serving in the imperial court. After 3 rounds of drinks, my imperial grandfather left the banquet, taking the opportunity of seeing him off. I found a balcony railing to enjoy the cool breeze.
How does your Highness plan to handle this?
I will counter whatever they throw at me. Submitting to fate has never been my style. From the corner of my eye, I spotted Marabou walking over.
I have heard that the princess studied under the immortals of the Great Temple. Would the imperial preceptor do me the honor of playing a game of chess? The king of Beatty is tyrannical and cruel, regardless of how severely weakened they were after he killed his way to the throne. He is already preparing to expand his territory. Without a grand strategy and strict vigilance, it will be difficult to march the army. But if he does not fall, he will continue his conquests. Beatty is the leader of the northern nations. If we can obtain the assistance of the great Zhao once ascend the throne, the benefits of trade taxes and mutual markets will be countless. The prophecy regarding you, princess, is also something I have heard of. Although His Majesty currently uses you as a sharp sword, he will certainly guard against the sword cutting himself. For example, right now, he allows you to attend court in official robes. Yet, you have no official hat. Although Beatty has the tradition of a new king taking the previous queen, Marabou swears by his life to the gods that I will protect you, princess, with all my might, and grant you the utmost freedom to remain in your motherland and become a detested regicide 100 years from now, or to be the greatest legendary queen on the grasslands. Which one do you want to be?
I lowered my eyes, shifting my gaze from his face to the chessboard. You will definitely lose this game. The great Zhao will agree to an alliance and marry a princess to your land, but it will not be me.
You often speak up against the injustices faced by women, princess, but now you are outsourcing the responsibility of a political marriage to someone else. That seems rather unreasonable, doesn't it?
You don't need to use such words to trap me. I am not just grabbing any noble lady at random, making her a princess, and sending her off to marry. We must find someone who is willing, and who can secure a lasting peace for both nations. I stood up and brushed the fallen blossoms off my sleeves. His Majesty did grant me an official hat. It is I who chose not to wear it. I insist on standing in the imperial court wearing a princess's crown. Let everyone in the world know that I am a woman, and the princess prophesied at birth to commit regicide. I don't care what people today think of me. I have my own path, and it will never be the one predetermined by the world. I want people thousands of years from now to know that a princess's crown can also bear the weight of the realm. My eldest sister is the most suitable candidate. After my imperial grandfather heard my plan, he fell silent for a long time.
Is your eldest sister willing?
I will make her willing. My imperial grandfather looked at me and suddenly smiled. In that smile, there was relief and also a trace of indefinable sadness.
You are looking more and more like your father, not in his benevolence, but like him, knowing what you want and daring to go after it.
I did not reply. I knew what he was thinking. He was thinking that if his father had treated him the same way back then, perhaps he wouldn't have had to sit on this throne, sitting here for 41 years. I took my eldest sister to see Marabou. Seeing that I had come alone with only a maidservant, his smile grew even wider. But soon, he could no longer smile. The so-called maidservant sat down. This is the princess who will marry my eldest sister.
This concerns the eternal future of both nations. Has the princess truly thought this through?
What do you think it would take to oust the current king of Beatty if I were the one to marry? Only His Majesty in our court has the power to support this plan. But His Majesty is old. How much longer can he remain on the throne? We do not know. My eldest sister, she has this capability. With her and Beatty, and me in Great Zhao, victory is assured. Marabou ultimately signed the alliance treaty, after all. As my eldest sister and I walked to the door, she suddenly said,
How this game of chess ends, I shall wait and see.
In late autumn, my eldest sister set off for the political marriage. I personally saw her off outside the capital, snapping a ginkgo branch from outside the city walls as a farewell gift. She didn't cry, and neither did I, but we held each other in a long embrace. My grandaunt passed away. She went very peacefully. Her life force was completely spent. There would be no more pain and illness. The Grand Preceptor rushed over from Tianchuan Pavilion that day and threw himself by her bedside, holding her hand for the first time in 50 years, saying,
How is it that you haven't changed at all? Only I have grown so old.
I won't. You still look very handsome.
In less than 15 minutes, only silence remained in the room. They remained snuggled together just like that. The Grand Preceptor's cheek pressed against his forehead, his tears flowing across his face, finally merging into the self-same tear track. With his eyes closed, he was immersed in a dream from which he would never wake. In that dream was his youth, his fine steed and famous sword, and the lover who was never late. There would never be pain, illness, or parting again. Tonight's snowfall isn't heavy, but it broke one of the finest plum blossom branches outside the window. My imperial grandfather fell ill. The imperial physicians said he had a tumor growing in his brain, and had until the next Lunar New Year at most. I moved into the side hall of Weiyang Palace. When there were state affairs I was unsure of, I would ask him from behind the screen. Back when he could still walk, I brought him a walking cane. Back when he could still eat, I would break a pastry in half and hand it to him, saying, Your teeth are bad, so you can only have half. He wasn't willing to do it, and threatened to dock the imperial physician's salary. Later, he could no longer walk. Later, he could no longer hold things. Later, he became incontinent. He threw a terrible temper tantrum. I pretended not to know, and he pretended that I didn't know. Only, to avoid another accident, he simply refused to eat. Left with no choice, I had to personally watch over him as he ate. His head ached so badly at night that he couldn't sleep. I could hear his groans even from the side hall. One day, in late April, the spring sun was shining brightly. As was my routine, I went to check on him before attending court. Yet, he was sitting in his wheelchair, waiting for me, because his headaches often kept him awake. His medicine contained ingredients to soothe and relieve pain. Usually, he would still be asleep at this hour, but today, his spirit was remarkably sharp, and his eyes were clear. The morning light caught his imperial robe, making it shimmer.
Lingyi, wheel us to court.
I wheeled him into the Hall of Supreme Harmony and stopped before the dragon throne. Below the dais, the assembled officials bowed in obeisance.
Have the recent memorials from the Department of State Affairs all been presented?
He entrusted several of the chancellors with heavy responsibilities, and then he summoned the chief imperial physician to the hall.
Summon the chief imperial physician to the hall.
The chief imperial physician had never entered the imperial court before. Looking at the civil and military officials flanking him, he seemed somewhat at a loss. My imperial grandfather called him forward. After a moment of silence, he spoke.
We have been bedridden for over 2 months. Recently, half our body has lost its function, and the pain is unbearable. Today, we entrust our ministers with our final arrangements. We hope you will all work together in unity to assist the heir to the throne, so that our great Zhao may enjoy peace and prosperity. We can no longer move freely, and we refuse to remain confined to this small space, staring helplessly at our realm. Thus, we have summoned the chief imperial physician to prepare a dose of medicine, to let us leave this world in comfort.
Your Majesty, you are currently unable to administer the medicine yourself. If someone else were to assist with such a poison, would that not be tantamount to regicide? We, your ministers, revere and love your majesty. We would rather die than commit such a treasonous act.
Echoes of agreement rose and fell throughout the hall. On my grandfather, the emperor's calm face, there was actually a hint of a smile. He slowly raised his head to look at me. This single look struck my heart directly, freezing me in place. The destiny that had been dormant for 25 years began to flow. When I was young, I looked up at him, asking him about the destiny of the two of us. Now, he looked up at me, begging me to fulfill that prophecy. In his old but unclouded eyes, there was a calm acceptance of death, along with a painful plea. In his youth, he had also ascended the fan tower late at night under the lanterns, wielding his sword and shedding blood for the nation. He had sat on the dragon throne behind him for 41 years, making him a good emperor whose name would be remembered for generations. Now that he was old, his sons were rebellious and mediocre, while he himself was confined to a tiny space by illness and pain, unable to sleep night after night from severe headaches. Even to ask for a swift end, he had to rely on others. I once admired him most for knowing his fate yet not avoiding it, but fate dealt him such an undignified old age, and so he was no longer willing to endure it. He wanted a dignified end, and made me his destined executioner. That aging body of his, trapped right where it was, yet his eyes were filled with a longing for freedom. I heard myself say, "I will send you on your way." Grandfather Emperor smiled with satisfaction. He nodded slowly.
Your Majesty, please reconsider.
My scalp was still tingling with numbness, but I spoke to the imperial physician with utter calmness. Go prepare the medicine that allows one to pass away peacefully and unconsciously. Needed to be brewed fresh for half an hour. For the best effect, my grandfather said,
Jiao Jiao, push me to the garden so I can sit for a while. Your grandmother loved those peonies the most. She will surely ask me about them.
Today was a beautiful day, with light clouds and a gentle breeze, and the warmth of spring. I pushed him along the garden path, looking just like a grandfather and grandchild from an ordinary family. He asked me to pluck a peony and place it in his hand. His hand was useless, only able to hold it loosely. I did not know if he could feel how soft the petals were.
Bury this flower with me. Bring it to your grandmother. She has waited for me for so many years. She will surely blame me.
I helped him sit on the rattan chair, and he lay back. The imperial physician's medicine was delivered in an insulated food box. Eunuch Shou handed me the bowl, his expression dazed and sorrowful. I took the bowl of medicine, feeling as though I was shaking all over. Yet my hand in front of me was very steady, so steady that it felt as if I were only holding a bowl of sour plum soup. The medicinal broth was brewed thick, amounting to only 5 spoonfuls. Once the medicine was fed, he lay back again, looking up at the sun, his pupils shrinking to tiny points from the glare.
I lost my sense of taste long ago.
Yet just now, I felt this medicine was bitter and sour. My hand paused as I went to put down the bowl, and it clattered against the tray. When did he lose his sense of taste? I realized I could not recall a single clue. At this moment, there was no need to ask further. My imperial grandfather's eyelids drooped, and he said with fading strength,
I am leaving. Remember what I instructed you.
I remember it all. I will not fail your high expectations. He nodded. He looked exhausted, but still hasn't closed his eyes. After a moment, he actually raised a trembling hand. Reaching upward as if to grasp something, I stood up and held his hand, which felt like a withered branch suddenly finding new life. You may depart in peace. His lips trembled slightly, finally forming a very faint smile as he slowly closed his eyes. In an instant, all strength drained from that hand, as if it had truly turned into a piece of wood.
The Emperor has passed!
The deep, heavy sound of the tolling bell echoed through the capital and was carried by the wind into the boundless sky. That year, my imperial grandfather was 74 years old. He had fulfilled his destiny. At the coronation ceremony, one of the pearls decorating the imperial crown fell off. Everyone fell to their knees in sheer terror, dreading that this ill omen would cost them their lives. I did not lose my temper. I simply ordered someone to bring my princess crown. After comparing them for a long time, I found the main pearl to be of the most perfect size. I reached out, plucked it off, and placed it into the gap without any adhesive or fastening. It fit seamlessly and flawlessly into place, as if it had always belonged right there. From the infant prophesied in Hanjiang Hall to commit regicide, to the first female sovereign ascending the throne in the Hall of Supreme Harmony today, I sat regally upon the dragon throne. Beyond the beaded veil of my crown, the civil and military officials bowed, chanting, "Long live your majesty." Many years later, I went to Tianchuan Pavilion to visit the Grand Preceptor. Many trees were planted in the courtyard, he said.
To me, when someone significant passes away, I plant a tree on the mountain that matches that person's character.
When I die in the future, plant a peach tree here.
Your Majesty will live to 100. It is far too early to speak of such things.
I took a sip of the tea he brewed. It was crisp and refreshing. Grand Preceptor, with your abilities, you must have known that the so-called regicide would end like this. Then why did you, at the moment of my birth, pronounce that prophecy in front of all the civil and military officials? He looked at me, a trace of relief in his eyes.
I told you once before, destiny is a seed. No matter how one prays, it can only bear its destined fruit. When I spoke that prophecy, I planted that seed because you and the late emperor are the same kind of person. If that seed is to grow into a towering tree, it must be meticulously tended to, ridding it of pests, fertilizing it, and pruning its branches. Because of my prophecy, you suffered rumors and cold shoulders in your youth. I taught you everything I knew to make amends, which can be considered a complete cycle. Your destiny aligns perfectly with both the heavenly virtue and monthly virtue stars. Your fate is unique. You were bound to walk this path.
What I suffered because of that prophecy was far more than just rumors and cold shoulders. That is not something a few years of your tutoring can make up for. Besides, these 7 years to you must have been nothing more than the blink of an eye. He gave a helpless smile.
I truly owe your Gu family.
My daughter currently lacks a good teacher. You have been cooped up on this mountain for too long. It is time for you to go down and look around. Is there any of this tea left? Get me some more. On his face, which was usually devoid of expression, there actually appeared a touch of speechlessness. I drank the remaining tea in my cup and stood up. Grand Preceptor, this is my imperial decree. I had not been here for many years. My grandmother's bedchamber remained exactly as it was when she was alive. That small mirror still rested on the dressing table, incredibly bright and polished. I picked it up and looked at my reflection. There was a strand of white hair at my temple. My face in the bronze mirror was still young, yet that single strand of white hair was particularly jarring. Someone approached from behind. Shi Jae-song took the mirror from my hand, placed it aside, and then drew a beaded hair ornament from his sleeve and pinned it in my hair.
Your Majesty should wear some brighter colors.
I turned my head to look at him. He had grown old too. There were fine lines at the corners of his eyes. Shi-ching, do you regret it? If you hadn't followed me back then, your career path would have been much smoother.
When I was young, I met Prince Duan and his consort in Tongyan County. Back then, my parents had both died of the plague. It was the consort of Prince Duan who took pity on my youth and had me moved to a tent close to her, taking extra care of me. The prince and his consort would often look at a portrait. Once when I was helping brew medicine, the consort saw my curiosity and told me that she was their daughter. Later, I was taken to Chiyun Town by my aunt. That year, you came to Chiyun Town looking for the person in charge. I recognized you immediately back then. I had seen your parents working tirelessly for the people, and I had seen you swinging a shovel in the mud. I knew you were all the finest people in the world. I detested those absurd, slanderous rumors. I wanted to help you, even if I could only stand in the palace court, to speak a word, to serve as a stepping stone, or as a sharp blade. Anything would do, as long as it could help you succeed. I would not hesitate to sacrifice my life. I did not do this solely to repay those 2 acts of kindness. I understand your aspirations and ambitions, whether as your minister or as a citizen of Great Zhao. I deeply admire and revere you. To die for a wise ruler is an honor.
I did not speak. I reached out my hand and gently touched the hair ornament that I had never seen before. This flower is quite beautiful. Who chose it? He was taken aback, and his ears slowly flushed red.
I chose it, Your Majesty.
In the 12th year of Antai, the emperor passed away and was given the posthumous title Chung. The new monarch ascended the throne, changing the era name to Luanqi. The new monarch, Lingyi, was the granddaughter of Emperor Cheng. On the day of her birth, a celestial phenomenon occurred, which the ministers found difficult to interpret. Even the imperial astronomer, a man of divine wisdom, prophesied for her. This woman is destined to rule as monarch in the future. She possessed extraordinary strategic brilliance and an unyielding character. During her 43 years on the throne, there was no foreign invasion. The weather was favorable for agriculture, and the nation enjoyed peace, stability, and prosperity. In the 6th year of Shangping, she abdicated the throne to her eldest daughter, Miaotong, and ruled from behind the curtain. At the age of 68, in the 15th year of Jingxi, at the age of 101, she passed away peacefully of natural causes and was given the posthumous title Wen.